Daniela, Bonita Bermúdez, Carolina, Puerto Rico, Real de
Okay, we'll start with this. Late next month, June 29th, former champion Yoshida is going to try to win a belt back from Tomoko Okuda in a rematch of their WBO Super Flyweight contest that took place late last year. Important things you need to know, things that matter.
Right.
Ahead of that fight, Yoshida had not fought in roughly 12 months. You know, she fought Tomoko Okuda late last year in December, and Yoshida's last fight before that was the year before in December. That basically means that ahead of that Tomoko Okuda fight,
ring rust.
Yoshida might have had some ring rust she had to shake off, and she didn't shake it off. Whereas Tomoko, the then challenger, now champion, Tomoko fought 2 times last year. She fought earlier in the year, then capped the year off by unseating Yoshida as the reigning WBO Super Flyweight champion. It's also important to note that Tomoko Okuda is several years older than Yoshida, roughly
4 years?
Maybe 5 years.
Oh.
Tomoko's 38 years old. She ain't no spring chicken. Whereas Yoshida is a very spry 33 years old. You ask me what I think. I think there's a chance Yoshida gets that belt back. I do. I think that ring rust is a very real thing, and it affects different fighters in different ways. I think that it's a factor.
It could have had its role to play in the first fight.
I think ring rust had a lot to do with what we saw in the Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara fight. I think ring rust had a lot to do with what we saw in the Shotgun Shannon O'Connell versus Sugar Neeks fight that took place in the Land Down Under. Very similar situations to where the champion has been out of action for a while and the challenger...
They fought in the last 12 months leading up to the match.
Takashi Misako of Misako Promotions is going to be promoting this thing over there in Tokyo, Japan. These girls do appear to be the headliners. Very encouraging from the land of the rising sun. Let me tell you something. I ain't in the business of apologizing for fighters. I ain't making excuses for Yoshida having lost the WBO Super Flyweight title to Tomoko Okuda. I'm just telling you what I think, and if you want to know what I think and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, it's not encouraging when a world champion sits out for that duration of time and they've got a hungry challenger that's fought, in the last 12 months. That challenger is going to approach that fight perhaps a bit sharper than that champion because they've had to use their tools more recently than that champion has. Safe to say that the more often you're fighting, the sharper you're going to be. And that's not exactly a mystery in this sport. Those long hiatuses, those long spells, those stints of inactivity, they can affect a fighter's timing, a fighter's reflexes, their conditioning, how it feels to get punched in the face when they haven't been punched in the face in a long time. Not everybody's Maxim Vlasov. Maxim, he was out of action for a while ahead of that Joe Smith Jr. fight. And in the fight, he looked all right. Didn't seem to have lost a step. Didn't seem to have missed a beat. That's him.
Yeah.
He don't speak for the majority of fighters, though, when it comes to stints of inactivity. More often than not, it can affect you.
Yeah.
Might have affected Yoshida. Fight's set to go down late next month, and we'll get into a full fight breakdown as the fight date approaches. Next fight I want to talk about is tomorrow night's fight, set to go down south of the border, between Bobby Juarez and Susie Candy Sandoval, otherwise known as Tintanita Soto. This is going to be Bobby's first fight since having lost her WBC Super Bantamweight title to Julie Hang Luna in October of last year. Julie Hang has since defended the title at least once. She was in action not that long ago, late last month, against a pedestrian-level opponent. Better still, it's her first defense of the title. Who knows if we're going to see a Julie Hang Luna versus Bobby Juarez rematch, depending on what happens tomorrow night. Maybe it's for the best that Bobby Juarez didn't go into an immediate rematch with Yuli Hang Luna, because let me tell you something.
What?
Yuli Hang Luna really did a number on what was then the WBC's reigning super bantamweight champion. She beat the fucking shit out of Bobby Juarez. It was one-sided from start to finish. I fucking love Bobby Juarez. I do.
She's hot.
Respected her for a very long time. She's fucking gorgeous, but she's 41 fucking years old. What do you want me to say? We've been seeing this a lot lately. The old line being replaced by the young line. Changing of the guard. Canada's own Jessica Kamara beating Heather Hardy. Jessica McCaskill beating Cecilia Brækhus for the second time. Yuli Hang Luna beating Bobby Juarez.
Yeah.
It's the way things are going right now. It's the changing of the guard. It's the nature of the beast. It is what it is. Beyond this Candy Sandoval fight, I don't know that Bobby Juarez is gonna shoot for a rematch with Yuli Hang Luna or see about winning a world title from somebody else. I just know she's 41 fucking years old. Talk about the girl Bobby's gonna be fighting. Susie Candy Sandoval. She's lost a lot of fucking fights. She's a pedestrian level opponent, and that's what you'd expect from Bobby, coming off a very difficult, hard loss to Yuli Hang Luna. It's no surprise she's fighting a pedestrian level opponent. Candy has been in there with Arely Musinho, Jessica Neri Plata, Diana Fernandez. She lost one to Joseph Noriega, who's going to be fighting Dina Dorsland at 118 pounds very soon for the vacant WBO title there. She even lost one to Yuli Hang Luna, who, we all know, beat Bobby Juarez late last year. And she even lost one to Bobby Juarez's younger sister, Lourdes. That's one of her too. Susie Candy Sandoval, career journeywoman. Lost a lot of fucking fights.
A lot of very good fucking fighters, though.
She gonna fucking lose tomorrow night? More than likely. Though even if she does and Bobby moves on from that, what does she move on to? What's she going to do? Is this just her way of capping off her career off a victory as opposed to a defeat? I don't know. We'll find out shortly. We'll get the answers we're looking for.
Fucking right.
Moving on. I wanted to talk about the aftermath. Things having unraveled between Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, what is now Tyson Fury versus Wilder 3. We talked about the he said, she said,
They said.
Who said it, when it was said, what it was about. We did all that. Been all through that. But now it's time to talk about the aftermath and how this could affect things moving forward. People are really fucking pissed off on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. The Brits are really mad because that fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua was really important to them. It was historic.
Would have been.
The first undisputed heavyweight title fight that would be fought by two Brits. There's something different about this situation, unlike every other situation before it. Neither Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder are going to be able to hurl any insults, talk any smack to Anthony Joshua in the build-up of their fight.
Now.
This time, the way they did before. This entire situation is a Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury situation, whatever it is, staged or otherwise. This is their mess.
Their party.
They were able to talk their shit before about how they're so fucking brave because they're fighting each other where fights between them and Anthony Joshua never materialized. This was the modus operandi the first two times, whereas this time, Deontay Wilder's already admitted that Anthony Joshua and his people offered him more money than was on the table for him to fight Tyson Fury. So that whole myth about how Joshua ducked you, well, you dispelled that yourself. Tyson Fury is going to have a hell of a hard time running that same material, that same old shtick, no same old gimmicks, when a lot of people on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean are looking at him with a very suspicious eye. They feel like he never wanted the Anthony Joshua fight. He's known the whole time that Wilder was going to be next, and what he was doing, his two transatlantic promoters, what they were doing were, essentially trying to use the energy and attention from Joshua versus Fury to siphon it over to a third Wilder fight. A third Wilder fight that, a lot of people weren't even interested in.
Not really.
After the second fight, there were a lot of people saying that there's no need for a third fight. Already saw you guys do the dance 2 times.
Rematch clause and that.
Mitigation, litigation, mediation, arbitration, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Ultimately, it's these people's dollars you're trying to get at, and I don't know how much the paying public is actually interested in seeing Wilder versus Fury 3. Even with all the controversy, even with the plot twist and all of that.
Oh, I'm starting to think the whole goddamn thing's scripted.
I talked about that to some degree. I feel like what we're looking at is preordained, and these guys are reading from the same script of which we're entering into the third act.
I mean, I don't know.
Could be staged. I don't know. If it is, I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. I don't know that it was always staged. I don't know that perhaps it wasn't staged the first time out, but the second time out they decided they wanted to get two more fights out of this thing? Turn it into a trilogy?
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't put nothing past these guys because they both strike me as con men. They both strike me as grifters.
And all this could be a grift.
But they've known the whole time there was going to be a trilogy. They were just waiting for the crowds to come back. That Glovegate controversy, that entire fiasco, the whole of last year, that stuff was fed to the media by Team Wilder. You could look at that as a means to keep the fight relevant. Controversy does sell, after all. A lot of people made a lot of money off of that Glovegate fiasco, whether it was real or not.
Media member now. They done paid Keith Idec, Radio Raheem, Fight Hype. Eddie Hearn told me he paid for the boxing voice. He told me off camera.
Pay
For
y'all.
Uh-huh.
Y'all gotta call Bill.
Mm-hmm.
All y'all got Bill number and ask Bill why is none of y'all getting that money because y'all started this.
The point I'm making is they always want us for free. Oh, you got to support. What about? Nah, it's about money. And that's what I'm trying to get y'all to understand. Okay. Now, if they want subscribers, if they want us to promote it, you got to pay us to promote it.
I mean, I paid y'all out of my own pocket. I gave you 100. I gave Fanon 3.
Uh-huh.
I gave
That conversation is from 8 months ago. Gary Russell Jr.'s brother is on the phone, barbershop conversations, and in so many words, I mean, you heard what they said. These guys were being paid to run stories. You think it's a coincidence that when Wilder finally came out of his cave and started making accusations himself, as opposed to his fans making accusations for him, you think it's a coincidence that everything this guy said sounded exactly like the Glovegate conspiracy that started early last year? It's not a coincidence. That stuff was fed to those guys by Wilder himself.
That entire controversy.
And initially, my interpretation of it was it's just a case of sour grapes. It's just a case of a sore loser. Wilder can't accept that he got beat by Fury, so his way of reconciling it is to accuse him of cheating, accuse him of foul play. Now I find myself wondering if this propaganda, this controversy, wasn't fed to these channels, not because it's a case of sour grapes, but because they needed an angle to help sell the third fight. The third fight, they always knew they were going to have, even when Fury was calling Anthony Joshua out after the Pulev fight. The third fight they always knew they were going to have. I'm starting to wonder if the whole Glovegate thing wasn't an angle to try to spice up the trilogy, spice up the third fight. I'm telling you, nothing would surprise me because I don't put nothing past these guys. They're both con men, and they've both lost a lot of trust. Though I will admit, the focus of this conversation really is more on Tyson Fury than it is Deontay Wilder. Even the Brits are mad at this guy. Even the Brits are starting to question his motives and whether he ever even wanted that Anthony Joshua fight. This is becoming an increasingly hard guy to defend, increasingly hard guy to get behind.
It's supposed to go down at Allegiant Stadium.
Which seats a capacity crowd of 65,000. You think they're expecting 65,000 people to show up for Wilder vs. Fury 3 in late July?
Do you think this will do better pay-per-view numbers than the second fight did?
Well, the second fight did bring in more pay-per-view buys than the first fight did, though the first fight actually turned over a profit. The second fight didn't. The second fight was actually a box office flop, in spite of doing very well at the gate, and in spite of bringing in more pay-per-view buys than the first fight, because of how much money got poured into the second fight.
A lot more than in the first fight.
Second fight failed to break even. According to Bruce Trampler of Top Rank, they lost money on that second fight. And it's not the only time that Tyson Fury costed them millions of dollars. How many millions of dollars did they pour down the drain stage in that Tom Schwartz fight? How much more money did they pour down the drain stage in that Otto Verleen fight? Tyson Fury's nobody's sweetheart right now. He really isn't. So if this third installment of Wilder vs. Fury, if this appeals to anyone, it appeals to Wilder's fans more than anyone. So, are Wilder's fans, are they galvanized enough that this fight won't flop the way that the second fight did?
Tyson Fury's losing fans by the minute.
The love affair, the honeymoon, it's over.
Ain't looking at this guy through rose-tinted lenses no more.
The Brits especially. Anthony Joshua himself stated the world now sees you for the fraud you are. You let boxing down. You lied to the fans and led them on, used my name for clout, and not a fight. The prevailing theory is that Tyson Fury, he knew the whole time there wasn't going to be no Anthony Joshua fight. He led Anthony Joshua on, he let Eddie Hearn on, he let the fight fans on, knowing that Wilder would be next, one way or another. People don't like getting dicked around. People don't like feeling stupid.
Nope.
People don't like having to pay $80 for a rerun either. So I'm left wondering, with all this controversy, how is Wilder versus Fury 3 going to actually do? How well? And finally, Joe Smith Jr. posted this caption via his social media, and it reads, "Just got word from my team that there's an offer to fight Daniel Jacobs. I love this fight, especially in New York. Growing up fighting in the amateurs, there were two fighters, Danny and Will Rosinski, that I loved going to see fight. Every time I got the opportunity to see them fight, they would destroy their opponent, and I learned a lot about the sport of boxing from watching them. I never got the chance to face them in the amateurs, due to them being a little older than I was. Unfortunately, when the time came that I was ready, they had become professionals. In 2015, I got the opportunity to face Will at the Barclays Center, and to me, it has been one of my biggest accomplishments as a fighter. I learned so much that fight. I would love to face Danny, to end that thought of, what if we fought? In my mind, as a kid. What do you think, Daniel Jacobs? This fall, Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you what I think, Joe.
What?
I like the idea of that fight. And I said it before, I'll say it again. This is a golden opportunity for Joe Smith Jr., who already has one of the most accomplished resumes in the light heavyweight division. The light heavyweight division, where this fight would take place. Fought Joe's newly obtained WBO title. This is a chance for Joe to make himself a lot of money with a familiar face that, you know what, at this weight is entirely beatable. I got nothing against Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs, very accomplished fighter, very compelling human interest story. That being said, he looked very underwhelming the last time out, and that was at 168. What's going to happen to him at 175? Joe Smith Jr. applies the pressure. Don't let that Maxim Vlasov fight fool you in thinking that Joe Smith Jr. is some kind of walk in the park. Maxim Vlasov's a cruiserweight on a diet, unlike Daniel Jacobs, who'd be the smaller man moving up. It seems that Joe Smith Jr. is just now catching wind of this potential opportunity, an opportunity we talked about here on the channel more than a few days ago. Eddie Hearn's got a couple of millions waiting for Joe if he wants to make this fight happen, and I think there's still enough time that Joe can do the dance with Daniel Jacobs, and if he's successful, squeeze in the unification match with Artur Beterbiev before this year is out. You fight Daniel Jacobs at the end of August or the beginning of September, and then you take on Artur Beterbiev at the end of the year. Cap the year off. With Artur, one fight is a considerably riskier fight than the other, so the order in which they happen in is of some importance. You don't know that you're going to make it through Artur, so if you want to get your hands on those M's with Danny, you got to have that fight first. Might be beneficial to Artur as well, since Artur Beterbiev didn't look all that fucking great against Adam D and E.
I mean, hey, let's see if it happens.